Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with the Charity for Civil Servants, Maintaining Your Resilience. My name's Kevin, and I'm your co-host for today. My colleague Jill White, who I'll introduce you to shortly, is also on the line. And we're running this webinar in partnership with Anxiety UK. Before we get started, just to a little bit of housekeeping and just to say welcome to everyone, however you've joined us, be that on the phone or via your computers. If you are joining on a computer, you can interact with the webinar using the console on your screen. You can see some instructions there. Specifically, look out for the questions part, even if you'd like to ask a question at any point during the webinar. Pop those there, and then towards the end, we'll try and get to those, myself and Jill. If you're on the phone, hopefully you've also had access to the slides. You can find them on our website. And if you look for the webinars section under our digital tools part of the website. And if you are on the phone, you can also email us at webinar@foreseeable.org.uk with any of your thoughts and questions as we go along. And we'll try and get to those towards the end of the session as well. So I'm going to introduce you to Jill now. Jill White is our Head of Wellbeing Services, and she's going to just give you a little bit of background about the charity and today's session. Over to you, Jill.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everybody. As Kevin said, this is a webinar presented by myself and Kevin in association with Anxiety UK. The Charity for Civil Servants, we've worked hard over the last few years to work in partnership with Anxiety UK to provide a range of services to support our lifelong community of people. And some of you may have already heard of Anxiety UK. And if you haven't, it's really worth having a good look at their website. They provide a wide range of services. And I would really encourage you to have a good look. Resilience isn't necessarily something that you associate with anxiety, but I would strongly urge you to cast your eye over the website. As Kevin said, the main part of this webinar is brought to you by the Operations Director of Anxiety UK, Dave Smithson. I don't want to say too much before we take a look at that, but what I did want to do was take a moment to talk about resilience and why we as an organisation think it's important. We all know that life can be busy, stressful with work and personal pressures, often leaving little or no time for personal respite. And with this in mind, it can be quite easy for our resilience and therefore overall well-being to become compromised. And I think that by understanding and building our own resilience, we can be a bit more proactive and take steps towards supporting ourselves before a decline in well-being becomes problematic. And I think that's the point at which things become a crisis. So whilst it's important to recognise that we can't always avoid pressure, we can focus on strengthening and how we respond, therefore cope with challenges. And I know that some people say that resilience is about bouncing back. But one of the ways that I like to think of it is that it's more about bouncing forward and how we can combine how we think and how we behave to help us recover from challenges and difficult situations. As Kevin said, if you want to ask any questions, you can email those into webinar@foreseeable.org.uk as the presentation goes along. But I'll hand you back to Kevin, who will start the presentation from Dave Smithson, and I hope you all get something really valuable from it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, so it's just going to take me a couple of moments, and I will transfer you to Dave Smithson, who will go through the bulk of this webinar session.
Hello and welcome to this webinar where we're going to be focusing on maintaining your resilience. My name's Dave Smithson, as you can hopefully see from that first slide. I'm the Operations Director at Anxiety UK. Now, Anxiety UK is the UK's leading anxiety disorders charity, user-led anxiety disorders charity. We were founded in 1970. We provide support, information, advice to a whole wealth of people on anxiety, stress, and anxiety-based depression. And amongst the people that we support are obviously various partnerships, charity partnerships that we have in place. One of the oldest being with the Charity for Civil Servants, For You By You, who we've been working with now for about 8 years. So many of your beneficiaries will access therapy provided by us, and part of our support program is producing this webinar to help you manage your resilience. And so, as it said, the focus for this particular webinar is resilience and maintaining your own resilience, maintaining your own well-being. And we're going to look at what the aims and objectives are now then. So we're going to explore during this webinar what it takes to be or become resilient. We want to understand some of the factors involved, consider some strategies for your own personal resilience, and help you identify ways you can create a plan to build and maintain your own personal resilience. So to start with, I suppose we really need to understand what we're talking about when we talk about resilience and your personal level of resilience. So first of all, let's look at the Oxford English Dictionary definition of resilience, and that describes it as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. That's fairly straightforward and fairly simple definition that we can probably all understand. Maybe a little bit more easy to understand than this next one. The British Psychological Society describe it as a psychosocial developmental process through which people exposed to sustained adversity experience positive psychological adaptation. And I can imagine that many of you were sat there thinking, yes, that would have been the definition I'd have suggested if I'd have been asked. But put in more simple terms, the Royal College of Psychiatrists describe it as the ability to cope with upsetting or difficult life events and be the best we can be. And there's all sorts of things that can be difficult or upsetting in our day-to-day lives, isn't there? On the day of recording this webinar for you, we've had terrible snow and it took me 3 hours to get to work. That was pretty challenging, upsetting and difficult, but that kind of thing can throw us off track, of course. So what is resilience then? So it's a process. It's a process in which how you deal with certain difficult or upsetting factors in your day-to-day life. It's being able to adapt to those difficulties, being able to adapt to those upsetting life events. And that upsetting life events can range from workplace, personal life, family life, social networks, etc. But how we adapt to things that become difficult in our day-to-day lives, how we adapt to the upset that we sometimes face, is all measured by our level of resilience. Being flexible. Resilience is about being flexible, being able to cope and adapt, as we've already said, and being flexible so that instead of breaking when you're faced with something that's upsetting or difficult, you're able to bend psychologically as well as physically. So being flexible to whatever the upsetting or difficult life event is. It's about learning from those experiences. We all learn in life from past experiences, don't we? And if you faced a particularly difficult or challenging or upsetting life event in the past, you will learn from that. If that happens again at a future time in your life, you'll remember that. You'll be able to draw on that experiences. Indeed, we deal with a lot of anxieties, and often we talk about the causes of anxiety, and sometimes anxiety can be caused by a learnt experience. And I often talk about when somebody's growing up as a young child, they may witness somebody in the family who's got a fear of spiders or a fear of heights or something like that. And the way that they see the parent or the adult around them behave around that particular fear, that particular anxiety, they will adapt that behaviour. They will learn from that experience. But in the same way, you can help manage your resilience and learn to maintain your resilience by learning from those experiences. So part of your resilience, your ability to be resilient, is being able to learn from past experiences. Acceptance and acknowledgement. There are going to be times in life when things are going to get difficult. There are going to be times in the month when there's not enough money left. That's an upsetting, probably difficult, challenging circumstance or event. But sometimes you have to just deal with it and accept that sometimes there isn't things that you can do to change it. Sometimes things are outside your control. Accepting it and acknowledging it can help you minimize that level of upset or distress that you might feel. So acceptance and acknowledgement is a form of resilience. Being able to be pragmatic, being able to say, well, that's life sometimes. That is part of being resilient. Having the ability to overcome challenges. So here we're talking about, part of your ability to be resilient is about accepting that sometimes things are going to be difficult, back to the acceptance and acknowledgement. But also, that sometimes there are ways to overcome those challenges, to problem solve. So being able to identify a way around a particular upsetting or difficult situation by overcoming it, by finding a different solution to doing it, will help you form part of your own level of ability to be personally resilient. Coming back and moving forward. What is resilience? Well, coming back and moving forward. Here we're looking at reviewing what's going on and then being able to, using your level of resilience, deal with it, cope with it, and then move on from it. So again, part of your resilience, part of your ability to be resilient is being able to come back from a difficult situation, take that step back, reflect, and then maybe go down a different path to get around the problem. And it can be built and developed. It can be built and developed over time. You can learn and build your own level of resilience. To a degree, we all have a natural level of built resilience. Many of us will know people who are very calm, level-headed, pragmatic, laid-back people. You'll hear them say nothing ever phases them. They're quite their own personal level of resilience when faced with those upsetting, difficult, challenging situations is not to get stressed or anxious about it, not to let it knock them off track. Whereas other people get quite upset and quite difficult, get quite upset about difficult situations and get quite tearful about something that many of us think, well, why are they upset about that? But that level of resilience in them is obviously at a much lower threshold. But being able to build that is quite important, and they will be able to do that. And you will be able to build and develop your own level of resilience and able to improve it and to help you cope better. So in this next session, we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So what could you do to be more resilient? We're going to look at. So building and maintaining your resilience, some tips here then, and we'll try and draw out during these different examples, some examples of what you could do. So taking care of the basics, just generally looking after yourself. How many people skipped breakfast this morning, for example? Just looking after your general well-being, having a healthy meal, having water during the day in the office, basic food and water that we need to live and survive. If you're having a particularly bad day and you've not got off to a good start, have you skipped breakfast? Have you done something that's knocked you off track? So taking care of some basics, simple things like your just general well-being, looking after yourself is critically important in help building and maintaining your resilience. Practicing relaxation. Relaxation is something that many people say, I haven't got time for that. But it's very important, and there are many ways you can do that these days. Mindfulness is a form of relaxation. I think mindfulness has become very, very trendy, very fashionable. Some may say very popular, but it's a form of relaxation. Again, drawing back on my own personal journey into work this morning, I could have got very, very stressed when I was sat in a car for 3 hours of what is normally a 45, 50-minute journey because of the poor weather. But I practiced being relaxed, and practice a simple breathing technique when I was stuck in traffic, moving forward at, I don't know, about 1 mile every 3.5, well, probably about every 30 minutes, probably 1 mile. But what I did is I just practiced a simple breathing technique, so I didn't get stressed when I was sat there getting, didn't let that frustration of being stuck in the traffic bother me by practicing a relaxation technique, such as just a simple breathing technique, just breathing in through the nose slowly, counting to 10, holding it for a couple of seconds, breathing out slowly for a count of 6 or 7, and then wait for a couple of seconds, then breathe in again. Simple breathing technique is a good way of lowering your stress levels and helping you build and maintain that level of resilience. So practice relaxation is a really good tip for helping you to build and maintain your resilience. Connect and share, which is about, we're talking here about connecting with other people, sharing other experiences with other people, helping you build your level of resilience, maybe on tips and techniques somebody else has used to help them. But also, excuse me, what we're also talking about here is making sure that we don't end up getting ourselves into a situation where you're becoming very isolated, very lonely, because sometimes the isolation of being on your own can lower your levels of self-esteem, and that can have a direct impact on your resilience as well. Gaining perspective, being creative, I think that's another important element of building and maintaining resilience. So, putting things into perspective. Again, drawing on my experience of today. Yeah, I was late for work in the office, but the first thing my boss said to me when I phoned up and said I'm going to be late was, "Are you okay? Are you going to be able to get to the office?" Her first thought being, don't worry if you can't. Well, take your time, get here when you can, and get here safely. So again, putting it into perspective that, yeah, I'm getting a little bit maybe slightly anxious, a little bit worried about being late to the office, but put it in perspective, I'm a little bit late to the office. The world isn't going to stop rotating. And being creative, sometimes finding a problem and overcoming a problem, something that's difficult, something that's challenging, something that's an event that's upsetting you, can be dealt with by doing something creative to overcome it, or doing something creative to take your mind off it. And focus on self-awareness, again, another important aspect of being resilient. Are you totally aware of how you come across to other people? Are you totally aware of how your persona, your character is received by other people? I think that's something, no matter what in life, you can always learn from appreciating how other people perceive you, talking to family members, and talking to other people, maybe direct colleagues in the workplace, and being aware of how people perceive you is really important. And you can work on that. You can change some of those natural characteristics if you are perceived as a particular grumpy person, let's say. You can work on improving that, and then that'll help you. Focusing on your self-awareness is another good way of being able to become resilient. Looking for opportunities and accessing resources. There are a lot of resources available to help you build resilience. We'll look at some of those in a second, but even these days, technology is such a fantastic tool. You can even download apps to help you build and maintain your resilience. Accept and anticipate. Sometimes there are going to be difficult, challenging events, upsetting events coming down the road. Again, being able to accept that that's going to happen, being able to anticipate that, being able to anticipate what's coming down the road sometimes can help you, again, build that level of resilience. Being able to forecast and plan ahead for something that's going to be upsetting, but if we prepare for it now, it may not be as bad as we think it's going to be, or internally you'll be able to manage that better. Your level of resilience in coping with that upsetting or difficult event is going to be so much the better. Another way is focusing on goals, focusing on solutions and actions to deal with those difficult or upsetting events that you might be facing, those challenging events. That could very well be a particular challenging, difficult situation you've got at work. Okay, sitting down, planning out what the solution is, what actions you're going to take are going to make you more resilient in coping with that challenge in front of you. Choosing how you respond. That's important as well. It goes back to that little bit of section on focusing on self-awareness. Knowing that something difficult is coming down the line, say, well, look, I know I'm going to be asked to do something I don't particularly want to do, but if I anticipate it and accept it, and I'm self-aware enough to know that I don't need to get angry about it, and I can just say, look, that's fine, I'll get on with it, I'll do my best, and we'll look for some solutions and some actions to get us there. Again, you've built your level of resilience, you've built your level of ability to cope with some of those difficult or upsetting or challenging projects that may be facing you in the workplace. And that all leads in and is directly linked to our stress levels. By being more resilient, you can also reduce your stress levels. I'm trying to not delve out into a different topic here, but obviously resilience has got a lot to do with how you help you manage your levels of stress. So building and maintaining resilience has got a direct impact on your stress levels, which has a direct impact on your potential to become anxious, because stress, if it's not tackled, will eventually become an anxiety problem. So managing your stress is important, and how we manage stress is by building and maintaining our resilience. And choosing how you respond is a good way of maintaining your level of resilience to a level where you're not going to become overtly or unduly stressed. And last but not least, focus on the positives. Again, we know people that are always pessimistic. We know people that are always optimistic. But try and smile, try and laugh. Life can be a challenging at times, and it can be difficult at times. But always try and find something to smile and laugh about if you can, because that's going to help improve and maintain your level of resilience. So there's another way of building and maintaining it. Some practical exercises I'm going to look at quickly before we finish up. And the first one, and this I alluded to a little while ago, about some of the tools that are available to us these days. So things you can do over time to help you practice your resilience and improve your resilience. So gratitude diaries. I did a quick search on the internet before we started this, and looking for a gratitude diary, a gratitude journal to make reference to as an example for this webinar. And I came across an app called Introducing Grateful, a prompt-based gratitude journal and gratitude diary. So there are even apps available for a gratitude diary these days, which you can download onto your phone or tablet. And an interesting reading about this gratitude journal, it said, according to research at the Harvard Medical School, gratitude helps people feel more positive emotions, relish good experiences, improve their health, deal with adversity, and build strong relationships. So this app was created to make expressing gratitude in your life both easy and fun, as well as to remind you during those down moments of the many blessings in life that you've documented. So you can understand and appreciate how a gratitude diary can play into that whole business of dealing with adversity. If we think back to one of those definitions, it said Royal College of Psychiatrists talked about dealing with upsetting or difficult events. And dealing with adversity, that's what we're talking about really. The purpose of resilience is helping us deal with those periods of adversity. Another exercise is exploring previous resilience. What have you done previously? Previous things that you've managed to get through. Previous difficult or upsetting events that you actually coped with and helped you. What did you do at that time? Reflect back on that, explore it, and again, it's part of that self-awareness, reflecting back on yourself and how you behaved and how you coped. Did you cope well? Why didn't you cope well? What could you have done better? So previous examples of difficult or upsetting, challenging events that you could have made some level of experience that you can draw on to help you improve your levels of resilience going forward. And the third example, the third exercise here that we got is facing your fears. Obviously, Anxiety UK, we deal with a lot of people with a whole variety of anxieties and fears, such as some of those simple phobias I referenced earlier: fear of spiders, fear of heights, fear of those kind of things. And often in a therapeutic relationship, one of the techniques that the therapist will use is gradual exposure. In fact, dental phobia is another common anxiety that we've been helping a lot of people with recently. And that gradual exposure, that facing your fear, will help people overcome that level of anxiety. So we've been working with an organisation called Centre for Dentistry, whose dentists have been working with their patients to have a dental anxiety, to overcome it by gradually exposing them to the dental treatment room. So it might start off with the first session, maybe they just come to the waiting room, sit and read the paper, meet the practice nurse. Next session, they might go into the treatment room and have a guided tour. Next session, they'll go and sit in the chair. And it may be the fourth, fifth session before the dentist actually begins to look inside their mouth and start any kind of treatment for them. That's a good example of facing your fears. And by doing that, you're building up not only overcoming the anxiety associated with that particular task or that particular fear, but you're also building up your level of resilience to it. So one of the ways you can practice building and maintaining your level of resilience, if it's around a particular challenge, by facing those fears, you can improve and build your level of resilience to it. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure there'll be many questions which I understand you'll be able to email in, and we will endeavour to get those answers back to you as promptly as we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone, and thanks very much to Dave at Anxiety UK, who provided the content for the webinar. I think a personal reflection from me, just first of all, before I hand back to Jill, is that I mean, firstly, actually, Dave is just a great guy to listen to. I could listen to Dave for ages, but a lot of the stuff that he talks about, I guess, is not the first time you will have heard some of it. But I know for me, sometimes you kind of just need reminding, and I guess that's where the gratitude diary element comes into it as well. Jill, I'm going to hand over control of the session now so that you can just talk about the services that the charity provides. And then while Jill's doing that, I'm going to have a little look at the various different comments and questions that have come through. So I'm just going to hand over to Jill.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it was exactly what Kevin said. I think so taking some time to reflect on where we are, where we've come from, and how we have our own personal journeys reflect in our resilience is really important. Dave did talk about that. He talked about the self-reflection and understanding what it is that's happened, how you responded, what did you learn from that, what would you do again, what would you do differently. And I think that understanding that differentiation is what helps us to build our ability to kind of bounce forward, as we talked about at the beginning of the session. I wanted to just talk to you about the charity services. Bear with me. Just talk to you about what we offer for individuals. So we offer a supportive conversation with a member of our wellbeing team, and from there it's about talking about what solutions and what advice and information and organisations are out there to support individuals, to help them move through their individual journey. We can provide a route to specialist charities and services where appropriate. We've got a wide range of support for managers on our website. So for managers who are supporting members of staff who are perhaps struggling with their mental health. We work really closely with Anxiety UK, Relate, Relationship Scotland and Relate NI to provide relationship support. That's not just relationship support in the traditional sense. You know as well as I do that relationships affect every single aspect of our lives. So that can be relationships at work, it can be relationships with siblings, other family members, relationships that might have changed as the result of caring responsibilities, that type of thing. So it's really worth bearing that in mind. And we have really great relationships with National Autistic Society and Law Express as well. Is mental health treatment, medication advice, or interventions. We don't operate as mental health practitioners, and we can't guarantee a solution to every single problem that somebody identifies, but what we can guarantee is that we will listen to people and try and help them to find the most suitable course of action possible. And we can't replace statutory services, so there is an expectation that people will have explored kind of NHS provision or support through their workplace EAP. The other services that the charity can provide, financial assistance, money and debt advice, and support for those who are caring for family members or friends. I think it's really important, one thing to remember, we launched our Wellbeing Hub towards the back end of last year. That's available on our website in the digital resources section. Within that, there's a whole section on resilience, which includes a series of 8 podcasts produced in association with an organisation called the Wellbeing Project. And these podcasts explore lots of areas to do with our resilience, many of which Dave covered, but looking at things like striking a balance, work-life balance, that type of thing, sleep, nutrition, bouncing back, and I would strongly urge you to have a look at those. They're not very long, they're only a couple of minutes each podcast, and they come with a downloadable handout for you to reflect on going forward. And there is the good old how you can support us if we're supporting you.
Okay, Jill, I've got a couple of questions just to share, and please do anybody if they want to contribute either online or by email to webinar@foryoubyou.org.uk, and we can take any questions as they come in. The first one, Jill, is someone. It was just a practical question that you mentioned at the beginning of the session. A particular website was worth looking at. I think that was the Anxiety UK website. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
Okay, and there's all sorts on their website, and I know that we've, as you said, we're providing all sorts of things as well, including our Wellbeing Hub. So that's is that anxietyuk.org.uk?
And there'll be a link to Anxiety UK on our website as well.
Great. The next one was a comment. We may have covered some of it within Dave's presentation. It's a really interesting one, but someone's saying they're particularly interested in the difference between coping in the moment of a crisis versus being able to bounce forwards once the crisis point has passed. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think Dave covered that. I think that is about, you can't coping in the moment is a survival thing. It's the fight or flight and how we respond to that. But I think that bouncing forward is about the self-reflection and how you identify what you did do well in a situation, and then what you would do going forward. So what was it about a given situation and how you managed or didn't manage that you would or then wouldn't do again? So, for example, is it that you respond too quickly and you don't give your brain a chance to kind of catch up, and you don't think through what it is you're going to say? So next time, would you take a moment's breath, count to 10 and try again, that type of thing? And it's a little bit like everything, and it's not necessarily something that people want to hear, but it's almost like you have to go through a difficulty or a challenge and not necessarily deal with it that well to learn how then you do want to deal with that going forward. That's kind of how I see it anyway.
Another comment just come through, and this is an interesting one that I know I've heard so many times, that we know that there's a massive benefit to physical exercise when it comes to resilience, and depending on kind of your either your ability or your wish to take part in that kind of thing, that can be a bit of a challenge. But this particular person says that they've got just a rule that they go for a walk every lunchtime, even if it's only 15 minutes. So it was an interesting piece of advice anyway.
Yeah, I think what's really insightful there is that within resilience, there's a school of thought that there's kind of 5 pillars of resilience, and one of them is energy, and the main focus of that is around kind of physical energy, and sleep is the other thing. And one of the things that I talk about with people is, if you look at your day, and how you kind of start your day or finish your day, is well-being isn't something that you can just top and tail. It has to be something that throughout the day you're conscious of, and that then has a direct correlation on your resilience. So I think that kind of what you've just said about that individual is their non-negotiable that day, every day, is that they go for a walk, and that's their time to kind of focus on themselves. And again, it doesn't have to be, a long period of time. It's more about the fact that if you practice it regularly, it becomes a habit, and therefore once you've got it, it's much harder to break.
That's my problem, if I'm honest. I can't get the habit, unfortunately, but I keep trying. Lots of comments coming in here. So the next one, is there any plans to make this sort of training mandatory within areas of the civil service? Now, it's probably not one we can answer ourselves on the webinar as a separate organisation, but what I can tell you is that we are working really closely with the Cabinet Office, and particularly the wellbeing team within CSEP. And we've got various different plans for things throughout the year, and I know that they are doing a huge amount of work on different resources and training, and that I'm told, although I don't have access myself, I'm told there are things on CS Live around resilience that you can access as well. But we'll look into that a little bit more, and we can always post further details on our website. Next one. I've trained myself to always look for the positive in an event, and try my hardest not to think about the negatives. This really helps, but I need to keep practicing. I think I can relate to that, can't you, Jill?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of us will be able to relate to that one, and it is about that practicing, and again, what you said really about the habit, I think, and that's the challenge. Someone else has commented. Sorry, go on, Jill.
To bore you, Kevin.
Go on.
That kind of looks at one of the other pillars of resilience, which is what they call future focus, and it's that ability to kind of think really past what's happened, and know what it is that you kind of are learning from within your own personal journey, having a clear sense of direction, without getting stuck where you were, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Really interesting on this. Can we recommend any resources for building resilience in children?
Oh, can I think of?
I know we have talked to Anxiety UK about this, haven't we? About for children and young people.
I haven't got anything off the top of my head. Let me just have a quick look. I do know that there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, but I don't think that's a children's book. But that might be something that we can perhaps upload if I do a bit of research about.
Yeah, someone's commented. Apparently, Scope do one called Mindful Monsters. Someone's commented really helpfully, so that might be worth looking up. And there's also resilience cards that can be used as well. And let's have a look at what else we've got through. Does the work on resilience include the charity challenging the government's austerity policies and the impact on mental health? Oh, now there's a question and a half.
I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is not exactly. We tend to work really closely with the civil service policy unit based at the Cabinet Office, which I mentioned just a moment ago, and this unsurprisingly tends to be a slightly more reactive kind of piece of work really to what's going on politically. And we don't tend to work in the political arena. What we do though is work or try and work and influence the permanent secretaries so that they have a real understanding. What I have a real ambition for, and I know Jill, you share this, is that we can be a bit of a barometer really as to what's going on. You know, we get a lot of anonymous data about the services that people are accessing within the civil service, and this, as you would expect, gives a very, very clear indicator at different times and on different topics. And so we want to, and that's why we're building these relationships with the Cabinet Office and with the permanent secretaries, to be able to feed that back, because I think they're probably in the best position to push back up as well. So it's probably not the answer you were hoping for, but that's kind of where we are on that at the moment. Someone else has commented, I have a blog which I use to put down my thoughts, which really helps me to reflect each week and also helps with other similar challenges.
Nice, yeah, I like that.
I get a little bit like the gratitude diary, I guess.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's about seeing it in writing for yourself.
Yeah.
It's a bit, just back to the question about children. There is a book by a guy called John Medina, Medina, and it's called Brain Rules: The 12 Principles for Surviving and Thriving at Work, Home, and School.
Yeah.
So that might be
brilliant,
worth having a look at.
And someone's helpfully added a comment just to say that there is some learning available on stress and resilience for civil servants on the CS Learning, excuse me, Civil Service Learning website. Okay, and a follow-up comment that government policies harm mental health. Yeah, I mean there's a lot going on in that arena at the moment, and I think. I mean, interestingly, there's a lot going on around the wellbeing and mental health arena broadly, and not just within the civil service at the moment, which I think is a really positive thing. And I guess what we're trying to do with resilience, and I know a lot of what Jill's working on is how can we be a bit more proactive as well. So rather than treating a condition once it's arrived, how can we be a bit more proactive?
Yeah, I think if you look at the webinar schedule going forward across this year as well, you'll see that some of the things Dave touched on about laughter, for example, sleep, those type of things, we will have webinars available on those as the year goes on. So we're just trying to do things a little bit differently, and as Kevin said, be a bit more proactive rather than always being reactive to well-being.
And I got one more comment that's just come in, which it was coincidentally really that someone's mentioned around sleep being such an issue that, and again we can probably all relate to that if your sleep suffers, everything else kind of suffers as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult to keep kind of a level head, keep focus when you're feeling sleep deprived. The ability to think clearly dissipates a little bit, but there are things that you can do about that. There is a section on the website around sleep. There's a podcast for the sleep, and what I would say is watch this space, because we are, as an organisation, looking at sleep as a future service offering.
So you heard it here first.
We did.
Final point, and my good friend and colleague Gail, who's on the line, has prompted me, as she rightly should have done, to mention the A to Z to Better Wellbeing toolkit. So this is a toolkit that's been created by a team of civil servants. It should be available on all intranets, but if it's not, you can access it from our Wellbeing Hub. Just simply select any of the resources, and when you get the email from our Wellbeing Hub, you'll also get the A to Z to Better Wellbeing. Quite literally an A to Z. Each page has got different tips, exercises, stories, all sorts of things. It's a great resource, and it's worth having in your back pocket or in your top drawer. So thanks, Gail, for reminding us of that, and thank you to them for helping us share it as well. Jill, that's pretty much all we've got on there today. So we finished a little bit early. Thanks to everyone who attended, as I said, either by telephone or online. Do keep an eye on the website. Lots more different sessions coming up. If you want to email some feedback, please do, webinar@foryoubyou.org.uk. We're always looking for other subjects, and Jill's mentioned some of them which are coming up. So very much appreciated, and have a great afternoon, everyone.